Hey guys, Drifter here. I'm excited to share with you the brand new Warzone map, Verdansk 84. We are going to be hot dropping directly into the brand new stadium, which was under construction in 1984, so it's not as tall. There's cranes, there's construction material, there's just junk everywhere, and it's a lot more porous, so the fighting has a tendency to get a lot more crazy. I do want to give a shout out to Activision here in the beginning and tell them thank you for sending me this early gameplay. This is not my own, this is something that the devs sent me, and I want to let you guys know that if you want to support me in the store, if you're buying the battle pass or any of the skins or anything, you can enter support a creator code DRIFTOR, DRIFT0R, must be in all caps and the O must be a 0, and that will give me a little bit of money if you guys buy things. So let's talk about all the things going on the new map, and I wanted to start with some story elements before some map specific elements. The big snowy mountain that you see in the back of Verdansk is actually Yamantau from the Black Ops Cold War campaign or the Black Ops 1 campaign. So, in the very beginning, you actually see Wraith, who is Stitch's right-hand woman, go in and blow up Yamantau to flatten it and put an end to the zombies that was spreading because we kind of sort of accidentally set them free in the campaign. During this time, Stitch still has Adler hostage somewhere on Verdansk 84, and there's a limited time mode where you're supposed to find Adler that will reward you with a whole player skin or operator skin. I don't know when it starts or how it works, but I don't think it's going to take very long before it begins. Of course, all of this takes place 40 years before Verdansk is nuked at the end of Season 2, which was just insane if you didn't already see that, or if you didn't already see the nuked Verdansk from Rebirth Island, which was really cool too. So obviously Wraith failed to stop the zombie invasion fully, and it later had to be fully nuked. Now let's talk about the map changes, because I think this is what you guys are really excited about. The fly-in sequence is now different. Instead of having the big cargo planes, you fly in like Vietnam style and helicopters like 1980 style. Just a little change, something different, looks a little bit more fun. There are 7 new locations on the map and lots of radically reworked ones. Mind the pun, it's the 80s. Lots of new layouts, geometry changes, and small changes to existing locations. This new map is technically a reskin of Verdansk. I won't pretend that it's entirely new, but it is a massive reskin that adds hundreds of new buildings, new locations, new geometry, new lighting and stuff we'll talk about in a little bit. It is one of the biggest reworks of a map that I have seen in a very long time, and in my opinion, it is much more impressive than adding Rebirth Island and calling it a brand new product. The environmental update was pretty good too. A lot of the terrain has changed on the map, so they didn't just yoink out buildings and put new buildings in. The overall geometry and elevation of the map has changed a bit. The ground, the terrain, the water, lots of little changes with that, but the big change, the one that I'm most excited about, is that the team decided to revisit lighting and color palette on all of Verdansk. They wanted to make it brighter and a little bit more colorful to make it feel summer themed, because this is their summer map. It's coming out in the summer. It's summer 84, and we kind of had a player visibility issue for a very long time, so they wanted to make it a little bit easier to spot enemies. The rose skin, and not just the rose skin, but several other dark skins got nerfed or reworked. They won't be quite so dark and quite so difficult to see in those dark corners. By now, you've definitely seen the brand new stadium and everything about it, so there's very little for me to talk about there. What I want to talk about next is Standoff. The classic Black Ops 2 map Standoff has been added to Verdansk. I think it's coming to Black Ops Cold War later in this season, but for now you get to play it first in Verdansk. Standoff is kind of its own unique location, and not really embedded or inserted into anything, but it is surrounded by a lot of other buildings, and it blends into the city well, so kind of like what Treyarch did with Blackout long ago. You could bumble into Standoff and not even know it, but you might even subconsciously recognize the layout of the map. The dam in the northwest corner has not yet been constructed in 1984. Instead, we have a flowing river, a ravine where the river is kind of cut through like a canyon, and a really big open porous bridge. But at the very top there's a surprise, which is Summit. A faithful recreation of Summit sits at the very top where the icy lake used to be on more modern day Verdansk. It is one-to-one faithful to the original map with additional stuff going on the outside, and it has working cable cars that can take you from the bottom to the top and from one side to the other, much like the cable cars in Rebirth Island or Black Ops 1 Downhill, which I think it's also supposed to be inspired by, even though this is more deserty and less snowy. It is Summit. Summit's one of my favorite maps. The combat here looks crazy. There's ways to get up and down from the ravine better. It basically looks like a better version of Dam, so I'm kind of excited to play there. you will immediately notice this giant radar tower thingy in the middle of the map that replaces the medical tents, which was south of Quarry. It's the new biggest structure on the entire map, basically 20 stories tall of open catwalks, loot, sniping, and helicopter shenanigans. It is very similar to the gigantic radar tower at Military Base in PUBG and has the exact same risk-reward problem in that, yeah, there's great loot from there, and yeah, you can snipe from there, but you have exactly zero cover up there, so have fun. One of my least favorite locations in downtown, what I like to call F-Boy Mountain, I can't say the word here on YouTube or they'll demonetize me, which is the tallest building downtown that everybody likes to snipe and camp on, is currently under construction. So it's not quite so tall, doesn't have quite as much cover, and it has a giant crane that lords over it, so I'm hoping to see less snipers sitting on top of it. Speaking of snipers, let's talk about the airport. The airport is no longer cluttered and destroyed, it's nice and new, because in the more modern day Verdansk, the airport has been bombed, the planes are blown up, it's all like, there's like a car crashed into the middle of it, like an APC, and the inside is really dark and on fire and generally confusing. Nope, not anymore. The airport is nice and new, easy to move around in, and the developers told me that what that means is that the interior of the airport is going to be less confusing, have better lighting, and most importantly, more cover and better elevation so that you can more easily have sniper fights with people in the giant air traffic control tower, which lords over the entire runway. Yes, the air traffic control tower is still there, and to the best of my understanding, it is largely unchanged. It's still pretty much a one-way up, one-way down sniper fest, and they said that the balance to that is that once you're up there, you have no resources until you come down. But they decided to make the airport easier to shoot into that tower to have sniper battles with. I don't think that was really the problem. I think the problem was that it was an area with exactly one way to get into without a helicopter, and really not even a good way to get into if you do have a helicopter, so I don't think that particular problem is going to be fixed. If we're going to be talking about the airport, we should talk about the new airplane factory area, which is probably the biggest change on the entire map, and it really fleshes out the hangar district southeast of the airport. So you know there's about 4 hangars and a police station and a lot of like empty tarmac area southeast of the airport in Old Verdansk, and between that and Virgin Towers, where the 2 apartment complexes where they also like to camp, there's an area that of little silos that I would like to call nipples. A lot of that has been completely replaced with a proper functioning airplane factory. A bunch of huge buildings, really dense, really urban, really tall, a lot going on. It goes all the way from the hangars to where the car dealership would be in current Verdansk, right next to Superstore. So that means that there's now an entire new dense urban area between airport and Superstore that looks like the biggest change on the map, and honestly it looks like the hottest spot on the map and one of the more difficult places to be. The Superstore itself is now an old Soviet-style Superstore because it hasn't gone full open economy yet, but on the upside, it's not bombed and destroyed, it's nice and organized inside, you can see a little bit better, and it still has the highest loot density on the map according to the developers, so if you really want good loot, Superstore is the place to go, but of course, it is going to be the busiest place to go. The empty area southwest of the dam has been significantly updated to include something, whereas previously there was nothing. That's another one of the things the developers like to talk about, is that there were a lot of empty areas on Verdansk that didn't have a lot going on, so what they really wanted to do was flesh those out and add new points of interest, and this was a pretty slow one. It's kind of north of the police station and right around where you would have that wooden train track, like the wooden train bridge. That area is now home to a small old mine shaft, and it doesn't look that big on the surface. Some of the images and little previews they showed me didn't look too much. However, there was a leaked trailer that many of you probably saw that showed a lot of like underground areas and mine carts and Indiana Jones looking stuff. So I have a feeling that this is much more of an underground area than an above ground area. So let's hope that there's a lot going on there. The quarry itself has been changed as well. You wouldn't think about quarry as needing a change. I thought that was one of the better balanced places since it was already kind of a multiplayer map. But in 1984, in this story, the quarry hasn't yet been fully mined. So the geometry is a lot different. The quarry is less deep because, again, they haven't mined it. There's a lot of salt piles to take cover behind. These like red salt rocks you can drive on. The whole area is designed to be a lot easier to drive in without getting stuck at. Little changes to the buildings and stuff. A lot of color palette changes there too. They have added a new gulag, which you've probably already seen in the gameplay by now. It's pretty dark and chaotic looking, so I couldn't really recognize a whole lot from it. I'm sure that it's some famous map and that everybody in the comments is going to clown on me and say that, you know, the COD guru should totally recognize that, but honest to goodness, I did not. Now, those are all the changes to the map. Let's talk about the new guns that are coming. They are adding the World War II PPSH weapon. That is going to be in Black Ops Cold War as well, but since it's in Cold War, that means it's also going to be in Warzone. The developers did not tell us any early stats, but I have been told that it's supposed to have a fast time to kill up close, miserable recoil, and its effectiveness is going to largely depend on how you kit it. It seems like they're making a really beefcake SMG. It'd be really fun to have a PPSH be meta again. Hopefully it's not broken. The most interesting one to me is the Swiss K Sniper. This is designed to be a Kar 98 alternative. It's another World War II weapon, and the developers talked about this a lot in regards to the Kar 98. According to the developers, the Kar 98 is the most used sniper rifle by a pretty huge margin in Warzone. The vast majority of people that are sniping have started to prefer the Kar 98 over the HDR or really just about anything else. And while they didn't feel that the Kar was unbalanced in any way, it didn't really need a nerfing, it was kind of sad to see these other guns not being used. So what they wanted to do was add a weapon that's kind of similar to the Kar 98, but does a few things differently to give people an alternative, or maybe they'll gravitate towards something different, something that kind of competes a little bit better with the Kar. They weren't specific on how it does something better than the Kar 98, but I guess we will find out. Weapons coming later in the season are the ballistic knife. Yes, please. That's coming to Warzone and Black Ops Cold War. I hope to God that it's a really fast melee up close, and I really hope that the shooting part is a lot like the crossbow, where you just instantly down people if you get headshots. That would be really godly. The Carve 2 is coming, which kind of looks like a zombies weapon, but it's a G11 prototype looking weapon as well. I don't know. I asked them about it. I thought it was going to be in zombies only, but apparently this is coming to Warzone as well at some point, supposedly. So a G11 type marksman rifle. And then there's another weapon called the AMP-63, which kind of looks like either maybe a CAP-40 or maybe like an old school Black Ops 1 PM-63. It's a little bit hard to tell exactly what it's going to be, but we have a lot coming, and there's lots of LTMs and events on the way. I saw a list of them that even in my NDA session was blacked out and grayed out and censored and stuff. So I know that we're going to have the hunt for Adler, and then we're going to have several more throughout the season of something. I have no idea. Overall, these look like really good changes to Warzone. We're getting new guns, we're getting new geometry, we're getting a lot of new stuff to do, and I'm really hoping that if it's even as half as fun as it looks, I think I'm going to be really happy with it. I think a lot of you will too. Guys, that is all for this video. I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope that you have learned something useful about the new map and new modes and stuff. If you have, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.